As state lawmakers enter their second week of the 2020 session, House and Senate committees are set to start debating several controversial gun control measures.
Yeah, we saw a large rally in Olympia on Friday. Look at that, in protest of these proposals, which come from Attorney General Bob Ferguson. He wants to ban so-called assault weapons and limit high-capacity magazines as well. So Brandy Cruz is here to take us through some of those proposals on the agenda.
Yeah, and there are a ton of things. I mean, there's things to do with background checks and the sale of ammunition, creating an office in the state of Washington to help deal with gun violence. But these are the two that really have people, for lack of a better phrase, up in arms. I mean, we saw some people open carrying on the steps of the Capitol in Olympia on Friday of last week. So here's what I want to do. And I got a message from one of you saying, Brandy, please give us the bill numbers when you're talking about these things. And I think it's particularly important today to do that because these bills are complicated and there's a lot of detail in them that we could spend hours going through on the air. So I'm going to give you the bill numbers of what I'm discussing this morning so that if you're really interested in this, you can go and take a look at all those details. See, does this apply to me? Does it not apply to me? So let's take a look first at the one that's going to be perhaps the most controversial. So what we're looking at here is House Bill 2241, and this is a ban on so-called assault-style weapons. So this is going to include AK-47s, AR-15s, but it also bans what they're calling in the bill copycat weapons. So these are weapons that have particular types of features that they say make them assault-style weapons. And so that's when I say go look at that piece of legislation because it's like a long list of things that would qualify. And it's also important to note that this is not retroactive. So if you already have a weapon that would be banned after this goes into effect, you don't have to give it up to the government. Okay, so let's take a look at another one that's going to be kind of controversial, and this is the ban on high-capacity magazines. So Senate Bill 6077, this is also something Attorney General Bob Ferguson has pushed for. So it bans the sale, purchase, manufacture, import, distribution of these high-capacity magazines. So again, going back to the text of the legislation, you can look at the actual definition of what is a large capacity magazine. So it's being defined in here as, quote, an ammunition feeding device with the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And again, this ban is not one that is going to be retroactive. So you're not giving these things up if you would have already have purchased one. And I'll say, and that goes into whenever we see new gun control things, if these do pass, you are going to see an influx of people trying to buy these products, both the guns and the high capacity magazines, before the law actually goes into effect so they can say, I already had it. Okay.
All right, so there's at least one bill having to do with guns that both sides might be able to agree on.
Yeah, which is very rare when you talk about anything having to do with gun control, but you know me, I like to talk about things that maybe both sides can get together on. So this one, it's House Bill 2467. So this would create a centralized background check system. It would be run by the Washington State Patrol. The idea is you're taking the onus off all these different local law enforcement agencies who have a variety of different resources. Some just do not have the resources to be doing this. So it would cost about $10 million per year in operating costs, but it would be paid for every year through about an $18, $19 fee per background check. So it would basically be self-sufficient. A couple weeks ago on The Divide, I had on Republican lawmaker Drew Stokesbury and Democratic lawmaker Joe Fitzgibbon to talk about the fact that both of them like this idea. Do you both support moving to that system?
I think so. You know, there's some federal rule changes recently, and it's something that we looked at very briefly in the budget. And I think a little bit of funding needs to be freed up to allow the state to take over that role. But, you know, I think there is a degree of sensibility for something like that.
The goal here is to have this system sustain itself and not rely on general tax dollars to support a gun background check system. It's not every day you see Republicans and Democrats agree on centralizing control in state government over gun background checks, and so I think that's a really positive area for collaboration.
You're right, Joe. It is not every day that you see that, but that is one thing that I don't really see why both sides couldn't agree on. For Democrats, you know, anything having to do with gun control, not anything, but most things they're typically in support of. And then for Republicans, this is something that doesn't take away your gun rights, and it also doesn't cost the government a ton of money because it's kind of self-sufficient in that way. So I don't see why Republicans wouldn't support it. It's just a matter of do they have the time to get to it.
We'll be watching, but you're right. It's going to be an interesting debate on all of these issues.
Yeah, and we're working to get Attorney General Bob Ferguson in to discuss some of these things about why these are pieces of legislation he keeps pushing for and whether there really is the political support this year to get them done.
Brandy, thank you.
Yep.
All right, this morning here it is